A company replacing workers with AI might look great at first glance. Costs drop, profit margins soar, investors rejoice, stock prices rise, and the CEO calmly talks about efficiency, productivity, and the future of work. But wait a minute. When every company tries to replace workers at the same time, capitalism runs into an old and stubborn problem. If workers stop earning wages, who is going to buy everything? Welcome to the world of the financial historian, where money, power, and history collide, and nothing is as simple as it looks. AI is usually treated as a technology story. Faster tools, smarter software, better search, cheaper coding, instant snapshots, automated customer service, digital assistants that never sleep, never want a vacation, and never complain that the coffee machine is broken. Yet beneath the tech hype lies a much older economic question. Capitalism needs not just production, but demand. It needs people with money to buy the goods and services companies produce. And in modern economies, most people get that money from wages. So if AI weakens the wage system, it doesn't just threaten workers, it threatens the consumer base that keeps capitalism running. The core contradiction. Here is the contradiction. Every company wants labor costs to be lower when it pays workers, but every company wants wages to be higher when those workers become customers. A firm can replace its workers with AI and still sell to the employees of all other firms. This might seem efficient, but if too many firms do this at the same time, the wage base begins to erode. Then the system can produce more with fewer people, but it is selling to a society where fewer people have enough income to buy what is produced. This is not just a labor market problem. This is a capitalism problem. Machines have promised abundance before. In the late 18th and early 19th centuries, the Industrial Revolution transformed Britain with mechanized spinning, weaving, power looms, and factory production. Output rose, costs fell, fortunes were made. Yet many skilled workers saw something darker. Machines were being used not just to produce more, but to weaken their bargaining power, devalue their skills, and reorganize work under the control of those who owned the new technology. Between 1811 and 1816, the Luddites attacked textile machinery in parts of England. Today, the word Luddite is often used as an insult, meaning someone irrationally afraid of technology. But that is too simple. The original Luddites were not fighting machines because they hated progress. They were fighting a system where machines were introduced in ways that destroyed livelihoods, weakened skilled labor, and shifted power toward factory owners. The fight was never humans versus machines. It was workers versus the people who owned the machines. History repeats. Who holds the power? That pattern kept repeating. Assembly lines made production faster, but also turned work into repetitive motion under managerial control. Mechanized agriculture reduced the need for farm labor, pushing millions into cities and factories. Computers transformed offices and eliminated clerical roles, while creating new industries and shifting who had value in the labor market. The internet destroyed some business models and created others. Automation did not simply take jobs in a straight line. It changed tasks, moved work, de-skilled some roles, created new ones, and shifted power. That last part matters most. Technology does not arrive in an empty room. It arrives inside an economic system. If workers have bargaining power, technology can raise wages, shorten hours, improve conditions, and create shared prosperity. If workers lack bargaining power, technology can raise profits, weaken labor, concentrate ownership, and turn productivity into layoffs. The machine is not the whole story. The ownership structure around the machine decides who gets the benefit. Why AI feels different. AI feels different because it is not only aimed at muscle or routine factory work, it is aimed at cognition, writing, coding, translation, legal review, accounting, research, customer service, design, marketing, logistics, administration, analysis, and even management support. For decades, workers were told the safest path was education. Learn skills, get credentials, move into knowledge work, do not be replaceable. That was the promise. Now AI is moving directly into the work people were told to get educated to do. The numbers are large enough to make even optimistic people sit up straight. The IMF estimates that around 40% of global employment is exposed to AI, and that in advanced economies about 60% of jobs may be impacted. The IMF also notes that roughly half of exposed jobs may benefit from AI integration, while the other half may face lower labor demand, reduced hiring, lower wages, or even disappearance in extreme cases. Goldman Sachs research has estimated that generative AI could expose the equivalent of 300 million full-time jobs globally to automation. The OECD says occupations at highest risk of automation account for about 28% of jobs on average across OECD countries, and earlier OECD work estimated that 14% of jobs could disappear over 15 to 20 years, while another 32% could change radically as tasks are automated. Exposure does not mean guaranteed elimination, but it does mean the wage system is entering dangerous territory, and the early signals are already visible in finance and professional services. Major firms are openly discussing how AI will reduce the need for certain roles, especially back-office support and junior positions. Reuters reported that HSBC's CEO told staff not to fight AI as banks began job cuts, while Standard Chartered announced plans to cut nearly 8,000 positions and reduce corporate roles by 15% by 2030, with technology replacing what its CEO called lower-value human capital. And that phrase is worth pausing on. Lower-value human capital. Nothing says human-centered innovation like describing people as depreciating office furniture with pulse rates, the company's logic versus the system's trap. For an individual company, the incentive is obvious. AI can reduce labor costs, it can speed up output, it can automate customer support, it can replace some junior analysts, paralegals, copywriters, translators, coders, designers, bookkeepers, and administrative staff. It can make one worker do what once required 5. Executives can tell investors a beautiful story. Productivity is rising, margins are expanding, and the company is becoming leaner. The worker hears AI assistant. The investor hears margin expansion. Those are not the same sentence, folks. Even companies that worry about the social consequences may feel trapped. If competitors use AI to cut costs, refusing to adopt it can look like weakness. If investors reward automation, managers will automate. If executives are paid in stock, they have incentives to raise margins and future earnings. No CEO wants to be the last human-employing company in an industry where investors are rewarding automation. That is how the system moves. Not necessarily because every executive wants mass unemployment, but because each firm is pressured to do what makes sense for itself. But capitalism is not just a collection of individual firms, it is an ecosystem. At the company level, replacing workers can increase profit. At the system level, wages are demand. Workers do not only produce goods, they buy goods. They pay rent, car loans, phone bills, evening groceries, school fees, and health care. They are not just employees, they are customers. If wages shrink across large parts of the economy, consumer demand weakens. The system may become brilliant at producing things for people who cannot afford them, but there are no customers left. This is the old contradiction inside capitalism. Capital wants labor costs low when it pays workers, but wages high when workers become customers. Every company wants fewer workers on its payroll, but every company still needs someone else's workers to buy its products. One company can cut headcount and still rely on the income paid by other companies, but if the entire economy follows the same logic, demand gets damaged. Production becomes more efficient, but society becomes less able to absorb it. The old patches no longer work. Historically, capitalism has patched this problem in several ways. Debt. If wages do not rise enough, people borrow to keep spending. Credit cards, auto loans, student loans, mortgages, buy now, pay later schemes. People keep consuming when income falls short. But debt is not free demand. It is future income already claimed. It keeps the machine moving today by making tomorrow more expensive. If AI weakens wages while households already carry heavy debt, this patch wears thin. Government transfers, unemployment benefits, tax credits, food assistance, Healthcare support, housing aid, stimulus checks, or eventually universal basic income can help maintain consumer demand when the private labor market fails. That may sound radical, but it is economically logical. If companies automate labor while still refusing to fund consumption through wages, the state may be forced to support the consumer base. Asset wealth. People who own homes, stocks, retirement accounts, or rental properties may keep spending because their assets rise. But this is not a broad solution because asset ownership is unequal. If AI concentrates wealth among the firms and owners of models, chips, cloud infrastructure, and data, then asset-based consumption sustains only the top while everyone else struggles. A luxury economy can survive with fewer workers, but a mass consumer economy cannot. The tax system is also collapsing. Modern governments rely heavily on labor income taxes, payroll taxes, and consumption taxes funded by wages. If AI reduces labor income or shifts income toward corporate profits, capital gains, and intellectual property, the state faces a fiscal squeeze. The public sector still has to fund pensions, healthcare, defense, infrastructure, education, and debt interest. So if the wage base erodes, what will governments do? Tax corporate profits and capital gains more heavily? Tax AI compute or servers? Expand public ownership to fund universal basic income? Or watch inequality skyrocket and hope motivational speeches keep the political system alive? A capitalism that replaces workers may also replace the tax base that keeps the state alive. When machines take over production and humans receive less income, who pays for society becomes a massive question. If gains are captured entirely by capital and losses carried entirely by labor, political pressure will eventually erupt. The real question: who owns the tapestry? This is where the ownership question becomes unavoidable. The future will not be decided only by how smart AI is. It will be decided by who owns the power, who owns the models, who owns the chips, who owns the cloud infrastructure, who runs the data centers, who is the king of data. When a worker becomes 5 times more productive thanks to AI, where does that gain go? Does the worker get higher wages, shorter hours, and a secure life? Or does the company lay off 4 people, load the work onto the single remaining exhausted survivor, and call it transformation? Right now, investors are pouring billions into AI for one reason. They expect productivity and profit explosions. Chip makers, cloud giants, and platform owners are valued not just as tech businesses, but as the future landlords of the entire economy. Railroads shaped industrial capitalism because they controlled movement. Oil companies shaped the 20th century because they controlled energy. Now big tech companies control computation, data, and infrastructure, dominating the AI world. The danger is not that AI becomes useful. The danger is that usefulness turns into dependency, and dependency turns into rent. For workers, the old advice, learn new skills, get educated, is no longer enough. Adaptation matters, but skills alone don't solve ownership. If the employer captures all the gains, you can be an expert AI user and still lose your bargaining power. When millions use the same tool, a freelance designer's price can collapse instantly. If companies stop hiring juniors, the career ladder breaks at the bottom and society stops producing experienced professionals. Conclusion: shared abundance or concentrated control? At the end of the day, the real question is whether AI's massive productivity will translate into shared abundance or concentrated control. Shared abundance means higher productivity combined with shorter work weeks, better public services, lower costs, strong wages, and widespread prosperity. Concentrated control means a world with almost no workers, dead demand, soaring profits, total surveillance, and a society where people are economically useless to production but politically necessary, just to keep the system legitimate. This is not a prediction that capitalism will automatically collapse tomorrow. Capitalism is adaptable. It has survived depressions, wars, crises, and labor revolts. But it adapts through fierce power struggles, not fairy dust. Who forces that adaptation and who pays the price is the real issue. AI can create brand new industries and massive wealth. But unless institutions distribute that wealth fairly, all the benefits will land in the hands of the owners. So, what happens to capitalism if AI replaces workers? The answer is clear. It depends on what replaces wages. If this productivity boom is shared through higher wages, shorter hours, strong safety nets, and fair taxation, capitalism can enter its most abundant era. But if AI is used solely to slash labor costs, enrich shareholders, and concentrate power in a few hands, we face a crisis world of high productivity, dead demand, angry workers, and extreme inequality. The danger is not that machines become smart and productive. The danger is that humans become economically unnecessary to the owners of the machines while still expected to act as consumers, citizens, and taxpayers. This is the contradiction AI exposes. Not a sci-fi robot apocalypse, but something colder and more familiar. Productivity without distribution, abundance without purchasing power, efficiency without security. History has taught us a clear lesson. Technology does not decide who benefits from progress. Power does. Machines can produce more, markets can reward owners, and states can rewrite rules. AI does not hand you financial freedom on a silver platter, but understanding this structure gives you a critical advantage. You stop asking only what technology can do and start asking whose pocket the money goes into, because the future will not belong to AI. The future will belong to those who own AI, tax AI, regulate AI, work smartly with AI, and claim the wealth that AI creates.